Hello, sir.
Hello.
Sir, firstly, why is the war in Iran with US and Israel is affecting India here? We are so far away, but it's still affecting us.
It's a great question, Saranya. We take many things for granted in our world today. In 1958, a man called Leonard Reed, he wrote an essay published in the Freeman magazine, 58 December, if I remember. The essay is titled I Pencil. An ordinary pencil writing its autobiography, tracing its origin. The supply chain involved in making a very lowly pencil, a humble pencil, was so complicated. For instance, the wood comes from the cedar wood in Oregon or California. The logs are taken to a mill in California. The power supply comes from the Pacific Electric Company for that mill, hydropower. Then log is cut into small slices, quarter-inch thick, exactly for the pencil length. And then graphite comes from Ceylon, Sri Lanka. And then graphite is processed and then polished. And then those graphite rods are inserted, and then these slats made of this wood, they put one top of the other, and then there's a glue. The glue comes from somewhere else. Then we have the brass ring there from zinc and copper. Copper mining and zinc, again somewhere else. Then we have a nickel ring. Nickel comes from Congo. Then you have the eraser, Dutch East Indies in those days, Indonesia. They send you the rubber. Vulcanization, again a process. So in making a lowly pencil, so many people who do not know each other from all over the world, they had to labor to make it happen. Look at the complex things around us. Energy in terms of oil, a lot of it comes from Middle East. Light petroleum gas, a lot of it comes from Middle East. Natural gas, liquefied natural gas, a lot of it comes from Qatar. Helium, which is required for all your computing industry, for space industry, 25% of helium comes from the Middle East. Sulfur, for sulfuric acid, and then the processing. A lot of it comes from Middle East, from the oil industry. Fertilizer, urea and phosphate, a lot of it comes from Middle East. So just the products that I named alone, they're impacting your energy in terms of automobiles, your energy in terms of heating, your cooking gas at home. Indians are already facing the heat, literally so to speak. Then your computing industry, your space industry, your fertilizer, both phosphate and urea, and therefore potential hazards to agriculture, to big countries like India. India produced last year 350 million tons, a record 357 million tons or so of food grains. Supposing there's a significant fall this year, China produced 750 million tons because they feed food grains to pigs, therefore they require more quantities. Supposing there's a serious shortage, the world which is self-sufficient in food suddenly will find itself in 100 years ago, before Green Revolution. So the impact on the world is very profound and pronounced. Many of these are commodities with inelastic demand. Now, if there is something that I actually don't need, if the volume comes down, the production is a little less, supply is a little less, the price will go marginally up, and I don't care. If one vegetable is not available or the price is too high, I'll go for another vegetable. But if life's basic necessities are in serious challenge, then the price simply shoots up dramatically. That's why oil price, if it goes up to even $200, if it's really a prolonged and serious shortage, it should not be a surprise. And imagine the consequences to the world economy and politics. Because if consumers are unhappy and they start protesting, demonstrating in democracies, governments will fall. Leaders are as big as the voters want them to be. If tomorrow suddenly people of India say Narendra Modi is not able to bring down the prices, we are unhappy, that's it. So the consequences are very big. We often think of war as a source of destruction, as it is. Bombing, sometimes in extreme case, nuclear Armageddon. But the global devastation on account of disruption of supply chains can be as profound, as pronounced as massive destruction in case of a nuclear Armageddon. You don't have to actually throw the bombs there, cause physical destruction. You can cause economic devastation. That's what now the world is on the verge of, and therefore everybody is panicking.
Sir, if you explained beautifully how interlinked we are through the example of one pencil and how the components are made from different countries. So when that is the case, when we understand that every product is made from raw material sourced from different countries, why is it that during times of conflicts and war, countries do certain things and certain things that choke those or hurt those global trade routes?
Actually, after Second World War, that did not happen. During Second World War, Hitler tried it wherever he had the power. For some time, Hitler had total control over the seas. But once America entered the war, America acquired mastery over the seas. So whichever power had the mastery over the seas, they choked the other countries. So a lot of the Second World War strategies were revolving around the supply chains. Whether I'll get the coal, whether it gets metal, whether there's something else, etc. But post-Second World War, the law of the seas is such that there's a universal acceptance, and as a general rule, all countries accepted the maritime trade and free passage in international waters. The only limited violation of that law of the seas was what China attempted in South China Sea, claiming that certain parcels of rocks which were only exposed temporarily in low tide. China claimed it as their territory, and then they dumped a lot of rock and soil there, and then reclaimed the land, and then built islands. It was unthinkable. Earlier, otherwise, it was standard practice that an island is an island only when it's exposed in all seasons, and high tide and low tide. China broke that. That's why the world was so perturbed about it. But otherwise, generally, all the countries of the world accepted the right of passage of shipping, navigation, all over the world without any difficulty. Now, there are three choke points in the world, three important choke points in the world. One is this Hormuz Strait, the whole Arabian Gulf or the Persian Gulf, energy, gas, other materials and fertilizer, they all move. And now Iran has more or less control over that. The other is the choke in the Gulf of Aden. Equally, there's a strait there. I think it's called Bab al-Mandi or something. That's even a narrower one there. The Houthis were creating a problem from time to time. So naval ships, because they were a non-state actor, they were not as big or as powerful as a state, and they're totally legitimate. So there is some kind of a uneasy equilibrium there. The third is Malacca Strait. The whole of Southeast Asia, Japan, China, the supplies are routed through Southeast Asia to Malacca Strait, and they're actually our Andaman Islands are very close to that. We're more or less the guardians of that. These are the three most important choke points today, given the geography, given the supplies to very important economies and large countries like China, India, Japan, Southeast Asia, etc., etc. And now one of them is literally choked, blocked now. We have also realized that you don't require to physically block it. Probably Iranians have mined it. Even if they did not mine it, the fear of the threat of damage to the ships, an Iranian public declaration that they will damage the ships, is enough to stop the insurance industry from underwriting. Without insurance, high-value commodities, they will not go. Without insurance, the ship owners will not take a risk. So even without a physical attack, the passage through the Strait of Hormuz stopped. And now that we have crossed the Rubicon, it could happen tomorrow anywhere in the world. There's no guarantee that Iran will not do it tomorrow again, or in some other part of the country, some other country will not do it. So in that sense, the world is now thrown into turmoil. Not only is there a short-term dislocation and price increase and shortages and so on and so forth, There is also an uncertainty. For instance, Saudi Arabia, from east coast to west coast, they built way back some 45 years ago, a pipeline of 1200 kilometers length. Yanbu, it meets on the west coast. They are now transporting 7 million barrels of oil a day. Now, tomorrow, you will have to do for every one country, Arab country, to go maybe to the west coast of the Arabian Peninsula, so that in case the east coast is choked, you can have safety. Similarly, we'll think of all kinds of new investments to rerouting, but it will not happen overnight. It will cost hundreds of billions of dollars, and it will take years and years. So, in other words, the cost of business, cost of supplies, cost of transportation, and redundancies to have extra insurance, that's going to increase dramatically, apart from the disruption. Now, Qatar already announced, because one of the oil fields, in retaliation to an oil field in Iran that was struck by Israel, Iran has struck. Qatar has announced already, even if the war ends now, for the next 5 years, 1/6 of the gas there from there is not available to the world. It's a loss to the world. Qatar is the biggest supplier of gas in the world. So already you see the consequences, which are immediate in terms of disrupting supply chains. And the consequences will be greater because investment will be affected. Much more money has to go into redundancies, alternative routes, and so on and so forth. And uncertainty is going to be more costly. And Gulf countries themselves are probably going to face a lasting damage, because for the past 15, 20 years, they have been beacons of hope, peace, safety, prosperity, modernity. All that is gone at one go. It's unlikely that they'll recover their past glory, and the whole region's economy could be in doldrums. So it has tremendous impact. Artificial intelligence, for instance. If Gulf countries don't fund it, AI investment will come down. If Gulf countries cannot give helium in adequate quantities, your computing industry, your chips, everything will be in a standstill. So no, there are so many ramifications.
Sir, when India is so much dependent on oil imports, gas imports, and we are very impacted by whatever happens in West Asian countries among these countries, what is the alternative for India then in that case?
There is no easy alternative. The supply chains will have to be restored. First, I believe even now, in another week or two, this war has to end, because the price the world community is paying is too humongous. The economic price, the political price, the disruption of economic activity, and potentially the threat to food supplies in the next season. They are so great.
Do you think the players in the war are affected by this war? Spectators are, like countries like consumers across the world are getting impacted by the war.
Arab countries are going to lose incomes very substantially. For instance, if the war continues, there is a no-holds-barred destruction. Let us say Iran goes and destroys the desalination plants in Saudi Arabia and other countries. It's all a desert, remember, Arabian Peninsula. 90% of the water supplies come not from rainfall, not from natural streams and rivers, but from desalination. Now, if you're worried about the next season's food, if water supply is interrupted, you're worried about today's water. In 72 hours, people start dying. So the risk is that great, that imminent, that real. So from water supply, from desalination plants, to fertilizer, to energy, which every day we need. Already in India, there are queues for the cooking gas. Now, maybe we can withstand oil shortage for a couple of weeks more, but that's about it. No country can withstand beyond a point. China may withstand a little longer, but only a little longer. So what will happen is, I think the war will end, because there's no choice. European countries, India, China, Japan, South Korea, I think we have to take the initiative, and we have to talk to both the parties and have an acceptable face-saving formula for both sides, so that the supply chains are restored. Gulf of Hormuz is now open for business. And then I think two things will happen. One is, as I said, long-term planning for supply chains, alternative routes, etc., whatever be the cost. The second, a multinational protection, multilateral protection, with absolutely ironclad treaties of all these important passages, the critical waterways in the world. All countries, India for instance, has to take responsibility. We We agree that Indian Ocean, we have an obligation to take care of the shipping routes and so on and so forth. China will have to pitch in. America will definitely have to pitch in. Maybe Russia, wherever they can too. So all the major countries of the world have to take the responsibility, bear the cost. And finally, the real guarantor is moving from fossil fuel economy. It will not be full, it will not be total, but going towards renewable economy. So China is far ahead in that game. India is making valiant efforts. Now I think those efforts will get a fillip. I think now it's no longer merely a question of greening the planet. It's no longer about climate change. It's about the economic security of the planet. I think luckily in that sense, the technologies are now available. We have to accelerate that. Maybe if 20 years we accelerate this process considerably, to that extent the world will be safer. Countries like India will be safer because our dependence on oil and gas will be much less. As you said, 90% of all the oil for India is imported. Japan is the only other major country which imports maybe 95% oil. About 65 to 70% of gas is imported for India. So we cannot depend on this forever. We have to move now and do all these three things. There's no one answer. We have to find multiple answers.
Sir, for a hugely energy dependent nation like India, do you think accelerating renewable source of energy is more important, or maybe storing some amount of oil or gas in reserve is more doable?
As a short-term measure, storing more is definitely welcome. But remember, even China, which stored probably the most quantity of oil, they're talking about, let's say, 400 million barrels. Now, China's daily consumption is 16 million barrels. China's import is 12 million barrels. They indigenously produce about 25% of it. That means you have 30 days. If you have also another equal quantity in commercial things, another 30 days, 60 days. So it's a short-term measure, stopgap. But the real long-term solution is renewable energy. So it's not one or the other. We need to do both. We don't have the option of choosing. It's like the mother-in-law treatment. Now we bury her, burn her, embalm her. If she's too much of a nuisance, we don't take chances. So we can't take chances now. When it comes to the economic security of a nation, energy security of a nation, food security of a nation, there are no chances to be taken. We will do everything necessary. It will cost more, so be it. Societies have to bear the cost.
So, what kind of role do you think India has to play in this conflict? Because India enjoys independently good relationships with Iran, Israel, USA, and much of the Middle East countries.
So the countries which are not firmly aligned on either side in the warfare must now join hands, bury their differences, first have a consensus. My view is that European community generally is staying a little away. China, India, Japan, maybe South Korea, and maybe some of the Gulf countries which are, despite all the hardships they're facing, are playing a constructive role. For instance, Oman is playing constructive. I saw just now an essay written by the Oman foreign minister, pleading for peace. So I think together, these countries must first meet at one place, must bury their differences, come to an understanding of what they think is a reasonable proposal for both sides to be satisfactory, then make a credible pitch to both Iran through interlocutors if they can't directly meet them, and of course United States and Israel. But ultimately United States is the key, Iran is the key. Israel will have to follow suit, and both require a face-saving formula. I think in that India has a role to play. I would not say it's a central role. We must not overreach ourselves, but definitely India has a significant role to play because we have good relationship on both sides, and we are a significant littoral power in the Indian Ocean, and we are a fairly large economy. Therefore, we do have a legitimate role, but others must pitch in. It's not India alone. It has to be China, Japan, and some of the Middle Eastern countries themselves, and Europe.
So, global bodies like World Trade Organization, United Nations, these were created to particularly avoid these kind of situations.
See, WTO is made irrelevant by Donald Trump's administration. Because WTO mechanism says that if there is some dispute, there must be an appeal. By not allowing the appellate process to go through, because America refused to nominate the appellate court judges. So once the appellate mechanism is not there, then WTO is now moribund. Though we must also say in fairness that despite all the problems of trade, etc., still global trade is about $35 trillion. I'm not talking about the wartime now, but in general, which is quite considerable. That's about almost about 1/3 of the total global output. So it's not that trade has declined, further growth is impeded. So beyond the WTO has no role. Remember, multilateral agencies only have that much power as the nation states are willing to give, particularly the great powers are willing to give. That applies to United Nations in particular, because the real power of the United Nations is not in the General Assembly. It is in the Security Council. And that means unless the 5 powers agree, at least if you don't overtly agree, you don't oppose it. Because if one of the 5 powers with the permanent membership and veto power opposes it, no matter how many people support it, the resolution is not passed. So the real power there is with the Security Council. And Security Council is more for grandstanding these days increasingly, rather than burying the hatchet and coming to an understanding. If indeed the Security Council does come to that conclusion, if America cooperates in the Security Council, if China and Russia are willing to not merely badger or make grandstanding statements but find a constructive solution, that could be a forum. But when you have to actually sit with America and Iran, it may not be the right forum, because America is a party. Any resolution passed there will not be acceptable to Iran unless the resolution is to use force. It's unlikely that they will be willing to use force against Iran any more than the force that's being used. So Security Council also is helpless in this case. So it has to be quiet diplomacy by several players who have the credibility, the stature and the size.
We have a few major states going to elections in a couple of months, sir, and inflation and oil prices certainly become the talk of the town during elections. Now, because elections are coming, we may not expect an immediate increase in oil prices, or petrol prices and diesel prices. Do you think domestic politics in the country are going to be a turmoil right now?
Every country, every democratic country, domestic politics will be in turmoil. Voters will be on a warpath. So the leadership has to now persuade the people to understand the complexity, because it's not about us. We are simply victims of global forces beyond our control. At the pumping station in America or in India or in Europe, the prices are going up. It's inevitable because nobody has any control over it. And if you don't allow the prices to increase to reflect the global prices, then you have to shell out from the tax money. So it's again it's not Narendra Modi who is paying the money. It's Indian taxpayers whose money is going in that direction. So we have to decide whether it will come through the tax money or through tariffs. Now between the two, any day, it's better than that the user pays. If it's tax money, even if I don't use oil, I'm paying. Somebody who's using it in abundance is not paying any more than me. Whereas if it's user who is paying it, you pay according to what you utilize. And that also will discipline me, therefore I'll be more frugal about use. For instance, should I go in a car for an ice cream? It's a serious question, right? And there's a global shortage, there's a potential crisis, a real crisis already. Just because I can afford, can I go in a car to get ice cream? So travel 20 kilometers to get ice cream? Is it the right approach? Now that question will arise only when I am forced to pay higher price as a user. Therefore, I will economize. So between the two, increasing the prices at the pump versus taxpayer subsidizing, it's always better to give the price signal to the consumer so that our habits improve a little bit, we consume a little less, the country is safer to that extent.
Sir, when it comes to the citizens, Indian citizens living in Middle East, because a huge part of Indian citizens are staying in Middle East and working there. When you see such a war situation in Russia and Ukraine, it was easier because only one country was involved and you just had to get your citizens out of there. But here, the entire area is, or a lot of countries are directly or indirectly a part of the war. So, how do you think, or how much effort it will take for Indian government to get the citizens out of there safely if the situation escalates?
No effort is enough. We have an estimated 9 to 10 million Indians, people of Indian origin in the Gulf countries. If you take the whole of South Asian subcontinent, the numbers are as high as 20 to 25 million. In some countries, in several countries, the immigrants outnumber the home population. Now, even if the air corridor is safe, even if the flying zone is safe, right now it's not. Even if all the flights can operate, right now they're not operating. As long as the war is going on, they cannot operate. A plane will carry, let's say, 200 people. You have to carry 1 crore people of Indian origin alone. How many flights do you think are required? 40,000 flights are required. 40,000 flights. It's impossible. So the question of being able to bring South Asian population, not only India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, other countries put together, is out of the question. We have to ensure their safety by A, as long as the war lasts, by minimizing or eliminating the damage to civilian areas, and B, by ending the war as quickly as possible, having a ceasefire. So there's no other option available. America could say all Americans of Iraqi or Iraqis of American origin or American citizens in Iraq, please leave immediately, because you have probably 3,000, 4,000, and you have probably land route also if necessary to go, etc. But in the Gulf countries, it's an impossibility. We have to learn to live with that. That's why nobody is talking of evacuation. It's simply not possible. They are almost an extension of Indian subcontinent. Numbers, culturally, economically, they are almost an extension. In fact, Gulf countries like United Arab Emirates, in particular Dubai, etc., they entirely, their economy survives because of Indian economy. So it's not possible to really relocate them now. No way. Nobody can do it. If the whole world also decides, they cannot do it together.
So probably my last question to you for today, sir. Do you see in the following weeks more countries getting involved in this war, not in trying to pacify the war, but in trying to making it a global war?
No, I don't believe in any. See, we don't require Armageddon or apocalyptic visions to imagine a very grave future. Economically, it's already happening. But in terms of war and destruction, it's as bad as it can get. And it's very tragic that Israel did not exercise restraint and attacked the gas fields in Iran. It's doubly tragic that Iran in turn attacked the Qatari gas fields. And Qatar already lost 1/6 of all the supplies for the next 5 years. It's a grave loss to the world and, of course, to Qatar economy. At least President Trump, he publicly opposed it, and he urged Israel not to bomb the energy infrastructure. And when America bombed Kurg, they only bombed the military installations but not the oil infrastructure. President Trump made it publicly clear that he doesn't want to destroy the infrastructure, the energy infrastructure. Let's hope that Israel keeps to that deal. Israel publicly announced that they will not also destroy energy infrastructure anymore. Let's hope that they will keep their word. Let's hope Iran will not be foolhardy and now needlessly wreck the civilian infrastructure, the water supply lines, desalination, for instance, or the gas or oil infrastructure. At least if that is the case, as long as the war lasts, the damage can be contained. But if that also happens, that will be worse than many other countries joining the war. It's as bad as it can get. It can't get worse than that. If you destroy all the oil fields of the Middle Eastern countries, and therefore they're unavailable out of operation in the foreseeable future, that's about the worst outcome for the world. It's as bad as a major nuclear war. You don't require nuclear Armageddon to destroy the world today. The economic dislocation across the world on account of disruption of supply chains is sufficient to make tens of millions of lives miserable, to increase poverty, to dramatically bring down the growth rates, to undermine the morale, and to dampen the future of the human society across the world. So you must not take it lightly. You don't require a nuclear Armageddon or many more countries physically participating in bombing. We are as close to that danger as is humanly possible in terms of the outcomes. Therefore, this war must end very quickly. I believe it will end because the consequences otherwise are horrendous. And meanwhile, even if it lasts another 7 days or 10 days, the infrastructure damage to civilian infrastructure, water supply, energy supplies must end at the very least. Otherwise, it's too fearsome to contemplate what the consequences will be.
Right, sir. Thank you for sharing your perspective with it today.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.